recording. And hello, everybody. Welcome to a Merlin cast. I've got Peter, La Professora, Pietro. How's it going?
It's going all right. How is yourself?
Not too bad. Just recording, pretending like we didn't just talk like a minute ago. You know how it goes.
Yeah, yeah,
The guise of professionality, I guess we have to try to have. But welcome back to the Merlin cast, man.
yeah. Good to be here. I guess it hasn't been that long. It's been a few
Uh,
months and not a few years.
Yeah, no, we've actually hung out more, I think, due to the COVID stuff than we had in years, ironically.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I somehow have more time and less time in this weird. Uh,
Yeah, I'm in a similar situation. It's like, but I'm glad there are some positives, and one of the benefits is watching movies with you more. So, all right, well, I guess not to cut you off because I sensed the thought. Actually, go ahead, go ahead. I sensed it.
no, no. Yeah. Start us off.
Okay, all
Your
right.
show.
Okay, well, a little bit of backstory. I mean, for people that don't know, Peter is another big fan of science fiction like myself and just movies in general. And this kind of came about because among our friends, we've been doing these drinking nights. We've been watching some movies together for what, pretty much since the pandemic started, like since April or something, right?
Yeah,
Sounds about
yeah,
right.
yeah.
And there's been this kind of running gag that's come up with Justin and Dan and myself about like just movies that we've missed and big gaps. And sometimes there's movies that you're really surprised somebody hasn't seen. And one of mine, I guess, which has kind of been going on for years because, which is partially a mistake. So this is unrelated to the topic, but it is connected. It's because of what movie, Peter? Not the movie we're going to talk about, but what started this? Do you
Oh,
remember?
no, I don't. I do remember there was a movie, but I can't remember the. I can't.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to remind him. Apparently, Peter and several other people have been like, Joe, Merlin, you have to watch Source Code. Source Code is like one of the great sci-fis, which for some reason I don't know if I saw much advertised about it, knowing whether or not it was a sci-fi. Like, okay, and I want your input on this because this will lead into the main topic, but we have to explain why we're here, of course. The question I have to ask you is, when I was looking it up, I realized, wow, it's a really highly rated movie. It is considered a good sci-fi, but somehow it's just one of those movies I kind of completely missed. Don't remember being advertised, and for some strange reason, I always confuse it with Eagle Eye, which I did see and thought was okay, but I always think the same movie. Maybe that's another reason why I never rushed out to see it. I don't get it. Could you explain why that might have happened for me? 'Cause
Okay, yeah. So, Source Code, I think was an April release. It was sort of like a spring release. I'm trying to let me think. It was what 2011.
hmm I was
And
in
it just kind of
college.
came out in the middle. Yeah, it was in the middle of. It did well. It made money, but it kind of
Quick time in theaters.
yeah, if I remember, yeah, it wasn't out real long. There was maybe a Fast and Furious or something else out around the same time. Um, it's it's definitely found an audience later on,
hmm
even if the initial run kind of it just got buried.
Okay.
And I do see your point about Eagle Eye. You're not the only one that's made that.
Okay. So it's not just me.
No, no.
Which I thought was a fine movie, but for some reason I always can connect them as being basically the same. I guess they're spy-ish or something. Sabotageous. I don't know.
Yeah,
Vaguely in the Vegas sense. I feel like the trailers were similar or something.
yeah. It's definitely a similar style between. I mean, Source Code in a lot of ways is kind of that slick mid-aughts action uh, style. There's a style to it. I think Duncan Jones is a great director,
hmm
but Source Code looks a lot like a lot of other movies. It's not Moon where
Oh.
there's sort of a unique style. Even Warcraft, which he also directed, that had at least it didn't feel quite like a Lord of the Rings movie,
True.
if nothing else.
So
But
you're thinking maybe one reason I kind of feel it's glossed over is because visually speaking, it doesn't really stand out as much as some other similar movies, maybe.
yeah, and I think like pop culture wise, Edge of Tomorrow, which has the similar
Yeah.
time loops, does displace it somewhat, and maybe is the better movie.
Which I love
They're
that movie, as you know.
Yeah, they're both fantastic films. I highly recommend both of them.
Okay.
If you like sort
Well,
of Groundhog Day loop.
which I know you do. One of your favorite movies.
Yeah. Oh yes.
That's a good one. Well, anyway, continuing to lead into the backstory of this podcast. Basically, oh man, being a sci-fi person, movie person, haven't seen Source Code, which everyone's surprised by. We've decided that, I guess, Dan on Dan Reviews It is doing these anniversary movies to coincide with old release dates and things like that. We've done things like the Pee Wee movies and Charlie's Angels, and he decided he wants to do Source Code. I think this spring, maybe like April or something, to coincide with, I guess, the 10-year anniversary. Something like that. That sounds
Yeah.
right, right?
Yeah. That sounds about right.
So I guess theoretically, you and I and Dan, or maybe somebody else, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we're going to apparently watch it and talk about it. So I was planning, I was ready to see Source Code. I found it. I was going to watch it like the other week. And then on that one hangout, we were like, no, we're going to do it for Dan Reviews It in spring. I'm like, well, I guess I'll wait a few more months to see Source Code. But then I was like, okay, well, in the meantime, Peter, since we want to kind of hang out and talk about these things, are there any old like classic sci-fi movies? I think I said that you missed, or I guess hadn't seen in a long time. You want
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So Dark Star was one that I have not seen in a long time. I did not like it the
to?
first time I
Oh,
saw it. I thought it was boring. I think it was similar to what we're doing now. It was a drinking night. It's
hmm,
not it's a slow movie, and I just didn't. I think I just bored with it. I think that,
huh,
um, but rewatching it, especially in the context of sort of understanding its position in the history of science fiction a little better,
hmm,
um, definitely it gives me a new appreciation of it. And there are there's plenty of other. I feel like I've seen almost every major science fiction movie at this point because I was
same.
looking back through the list, and there's a few from recent years. Like I still haven't seen Annihilation, but
Oh, that's a good one.
yeah, that's what everyone tells me that. I have a few kind of on the list, but they're so recent that I wanted to do something a little
Classic.
older, that something you haven't maybe covered on the show, and that
It's
people
fair.
might not be familiar with.
Well, and there you go. Peter basically introduced it. That is what we're going to be talking about today. Is a classic sci-fi film, Dark Star, which just brief introduction for people that haven't seen it. 1974, kind of a sci-fi comedy satire, probably of 2001: Space Odyssey by one of my favorite directors, John Carpenter. Is his first movie, and I was researching a little bit because I actually want to find out more about it, and this movie, well, and we'll talk about why this movie impresses me a lot more in retrospect, is that this movie is extremely low budget. It was literally a student film that John Carpenter and some of his friends were working on over years that eventually got expanded over time. So it was like $60,000 or something. So this is a really low budget movie, independent film, and which like I knew it was low budget, but I never realized it was like it really was a tight, small
Mhm.
production, which I like now for more recent reasons. But I always appreciate that. And just going off, I mean, my general knowledge of it, I mean, I knew what well, I guess I'll talk. All right. Should I go off like a little more backstory? Do you want me to talk about like, we will talk about our initial impressions, then go into it? How do you want to do it, Peter? Because I
I was
have
gonna say,
lots
yeah,
of
let's keep
thoughts.
talking about the backstory. I mean, I
Okay.
think that, yeah.
All right. Well, just generally from what I knew about it, even before I watched it the first time, okay, this is kind of an influential cult classic. John Carpenter obviously went on to, direct other big horror and sci-fi movies. And another interesting thing, though, which I knew, but for some reason didn't click for me. Obviously, we'll talk about the bomb and how that's kind of a Hal satire, and it's like kind of riffing on Space Odyssey a bit. But I've always found the interesting thing about Dark Star is it has influence on other films, but really that here's an analogy I kind of came up with today, and I think you'll appreciate it. I think Dark Star is like the nephew of 2001: A Space Odyssey, but it's like the father of Alien.
Yeah. Yeah, I put this film in a maybe similar place and indeed time to THX 1138, which not only influences Star Wars, that's George Lucas's student film from
Hmm.
I think I think it's a year before this. I
A
think
year or
it's
two,
70,
yeah,
yeah,
early 70s.
73,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. Um, but but even that has influence outside of Star Wars because it sort of creates a very sanitized dystopian future, and Dark Star I feel like does something similar, albeit with a more
uh,
uh, gritty, low class.
humorous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you bring that up. That's actually a really good comparison because one thing, and I guess we'll jump all over, but we'll go through it a little bit more. But the one thing I really appreciate about this movie is kind of how it seems to be. It obviously inspired other things, much like THX did, but also like THX, it's kind of really heavily based on old school core classic sci-fi ideas and elements that it's like it's almost really just trying to redo them kind of as an homage in a way. Especially with Dark Star because THX I think was a little bit sleeker and bigger in its production, but Dark Star, especially in regards to just the some of the effects, clearly
Mhm.
it's like they're cool certainly, but they're very much directly based on stuff from the previous decades.
Yeah, they're yeah. I'm out. I mean, we're rewatching it again, knowing the backstory, knowing the budget. Yeah, like the effects are seem outdated, but for the money they were spending in the 70s,
Hmm.
this production on this I think started. If 2001 was 68, it starts a year or two after that. The
Hmm.
early 70s is when Carpenter's in uh, at USC.
Hmm.
So, and they're doing it with no budget. Kubrick had a massive budget. Kubrick could
Yeah,
do whatever he wanted to do.
this
Um,
is like the other side of the coin.
yeah,
A couple guys scrounging money together over years trying to put it together. And
yeah.
I appreciated that a lot. And I was actually thinking the same thing because obviously this is kind of a little bit of an answer, a low budget, slightly darker, edgier, grittier answer to 2001 sleeker, bigger budget. But but like you said though, obviously Kubrick had a much bigger budget, which kind of made science fiction more impressive and taken seriously. This is kind of embracing the core cheesiness and general attitude towards science fiction though. Like I liked your point about how it looks like, okay, the effects are a bit outdated, but for the time with the money they're doing, this looks like a 70s sci-fi movie trying to do effects from the 50s and doing it really well.
Mm, yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting influences here, and I think of stuff like the beach ball alien, that the pet that the one guy has, that is cheesy, but they do it well enough that you accept it. You don't go, oh
Yes.
yeah, you might see it at first and go, yeah, it's a beach
Oh.
ball, but you like it. You're like, okay, yeah, okay, it's an alien. It just looks like a beach. You accept it on some level as the film goes on, that you accept, okay,
Yes.
this is some weird alien that he has. You know,
And this is a movie that with stuff like that is the perfect one of the standout examples of the film. It definitely is says why it's a film that speaks more to my sensibilities, perhaps even more than it did when I first saw it like 10 or 15 years ago. Just appreciation more for filmmaking and old sci-fi. Like I love all the cheesy stuff despite the great ideas. And now one thing I appreciate too about the beach ball alien is that literally that's one of the things that comes up is that whole element, that whole aspect of the film, which we'll talk more about, I'm sure. But one clever thing I did not pick up on the last time is that they do acknowledge that it is kind of like a beach ball. That's how they describe it because that's how its physiology works. So even though it's literally quite obviously a painted on beach ball, it acts like it. And when he eventually pops it, it deflates like a balloon. Like, wow, it really was full of gas mostly. What a weird creature. So it is kind of cool how it is done in such a way that it fits the mood of the film and you still accept it. And I find that really cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, really, yeah. By drawing our attention to it, maybe gets us to accept it a little more.
Being cheeky,
Um,
like not trying to pretend like it's a better effect than it is. No, it's a weird beach ball kind of
yeah,
alien. Sure. Which Peter, did they say in the film that was the thing that they had found in the probability of intelligent life? So it was like that was the intelligent life they found. I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. I
Yeah.
believe that was the point, is that they had there's always this probability, and the one time they did find intelligent life,
On
it
that
turns out it
beach
was
ball
this,
thing we decided to
yeah.
keep.
Um,
Yeah, the beach ball, man, the beach ball alien is something that I really appreciate on one hand, but I think it is probably my biggest issue with the movie, though. Not the monster or creature character itself, but its placement, because uh, 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 the film definitely feels like it's kind of two shorter movies that are put together. And like I thought this was kind of fun. All right, we have hijinks. I understand you've got to break it up with some action slash comedy, which there was good stuff in there, but it's kind of so disconnected from the rest of the movie and the main plot. I'm like, yeah, I see the whole bomb thing they're trying to get to. That's like a tighter short story idea that we're kind of padding out with different things. And if it was more fleshed out, like seamlessly with the characters, I think it could have been a fuller film, but it does feel a little disjointed with that, I think.
yeah, I think it does because they kill the beach ball,
Mm-hmm.
and then like the next sequence starts. Then they get hit the electromagnetic pulse, and then that's when the bomb goes haywire. The beach ball doesn't cause that. It's just a random. They kill the beach ball because they can't uh,
Control it anymore, really.
control it, and then the weird stuff starts happening.
I
You
guess
know,
it's just to have a sense of the wackiness on the ship, like what they've encountered, what the point they're at. I mean, there's little bits of that when you see how bored they are and how much their lack of companionship towards each other. There's some of that, but the ball thing, I guess, for Dan O'Bannon's character, I I guess that's I guess that's where most of the comedy in the movie comes from, but I don't know if I'd say it's the best. I mean, I chuckled a bit, like when he's stuck in the elevator. I thought that was kind of funny, and there was also some
yeah,
definite tension
yeah.
there, for sure. There
Yeah,
was a
the
good
elevator
balance.
is I think was the best scene. It's this long. It's like I don't know, 5 or
The whole
longer. Yeah,
the whole thing with the bubble alien was like a good chunk, like 20 minutes of the movie or something.
yeah,
It was a good chunk of it. But yeah, the elevator sequence was really impressive, and I really liked the forced perspective. There's a lot of good trick photography there that they played with. I liked that a lot. It was and Carpenter's signatures are there with the synths, so the electronic use of music and lighting. Like I was surprised how there is kind of some chuckles, but when he is in the elevator, for instance, there is some tension. Like I when he's hanging there, I'm like, wow, I actually am worried he's going to get crushed. And that scene as well, which has some comedy and tension, where he's stuck there because he can't get his
yeah,
hips around the porthole, and the computer's like, oh, please leave the elevator. We're going to dislodge it. I'm thinking, oh no, is it going to fall out? Is it going to pop up? What's going to happen to it? And of course, it's not that big of a deal, but
yeah,
it's you don't know what's going to happen to him.
yeah. I mean, and I think that's part of the part of the charm of this movie is that there's tension at like that moment at the end with the bomb. That there's tension that things could go
Mm-hmm.
very wrong, and then they do, and then
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
And, and
I, I,
they established that really early in the film, because I like how when the asteroids come in, they enter the field, and that kind of speaks to the whole computer, which is how eventually Mother is like, I want to let that my systems aren't working, so you have less than 1 minute to do something before the ship explodes. Like, oh, like that's the attitude of the ship. Like it's very courteous, but the AI doesn't really care too much what happens to them, no matter what, and that speaks a lot to their relationship to the technology. And it's just like at a moment's notice, like they were given almost no warning, and there's a lot of little
mhm.
bits throughout that I really appreciated.
Well, that's something that's really explored in Alien, in which they're sent to a planet by the corporation who does not. They're expendable.
Yep.
We don't. Yeah, they are less valuable than in this case blowing up the planets. And Alien, the new species, and crew expendable.
Yeah, and they kind of obviously tie into that with the first opening video and with a couple other bits throughout.
Hmm.
They're not like, we're sorry, you're asking for these things, we can't help you, but good job anyway. Like they clearly don't care. Just keep clearing planets, and you can definitely see their spirits are kind of breaking. And there is. and I guess like it's one of those things. I always knew that this was like influenced by, and did influence Alien, but I didn't realize that it really is like the pre-Alien because the screenwriter or co-screenwriter went on to write it, and he also was starred in this movie. He helped edit it. Like this was like between Carpenter and the Alien guy, I'll call him, not really
Mhm.
Scott, but Dan O'Bannon. Like this really was like the building block because you're right. You see that a lot of elements of this story are fleshed out in Alien. It's like, wow, that's so obvious.
Yeah, yeah, this really feels like a test run for Alien, but there's also elements of The Thing in here.
Hmm.
The crew really don't like each other.
And even and that almost could be like a John Carpenter thing. When I remember those guys just in the I guess the main bridge, just kind of talking to each other. They all have that bearded, grizzly, isolated Kurt Russell vibe. Like, wow,
Yeah,
there are some of the consistent themes and character bits we'll see are they're rooted here. You see kind of the origins of a lot of that stuff. It's pretty cool.
yeah, it's really interesting to see all these different threads that will develop in different ways over the course of their career, and even sort of percolate down into science fiction at large.
Hmm.
In there's a lot to this style and the sort of cheaply made but looks good that shows up in a lot of other science fiction to follow.
Yeah, and I think that's actually kind of cool because and that's I guess inevitably we'll always talk about it like our last sci-fi discussion, but you maybe you can elaborate more because I see the 2001 stuff pretty well. I see a lot of Carpenter stuff, and Alien is the most obvious, but I saw here that this did influence science fiction in a lot of other ways, particularly Star Wars. And as I was watching, I'm thinking, I, I guess maybe stylistically a little bit, but I wasn't seeing it too clearly because when I think about it, maybe the only thing I could think of was it's kind of really impressive that John Carpenter and his friends basically able to put this together and make it look so good on such a low budget. Maybe it could have pushed the special effects people at Star Wars to do that as well because they used a lot of old techniques and combined it with new stuff at the time to make it look so sleek. And you said that a lot of the low budget look still does kind of continue on decades on. I appreciate that old school, I guess, 50s space age sensibility, but I also feel like Star Wars making everything sleeker really made sci-fi more acceptable kind of to the mainstream. So I'm wondering where the connection is there. I had a hard time seeing it.
Well, I'd say this is influential on something like Blade Runner,
Hmm.
which takes the sort of grungy industrial style to a whole other level,
Hmm.
um, which itself is sort of responding to Star Wars, but trying to do the opposite of trying to go, okay, what does it look like in a universe where corporations run everything as opposed to an evil empire and a good rebellion.
Hmm.
Um, and and O'Bannon as well does do some work on Star Wars. The first one,
Total Recall, I guess, as well, right?
yeah. O'Bannon also works on Jodorowsky's Dune, the Dune film that wasn't made.
The other one, yeah.
Yeah, the other the not David Lynch one. Even before Alien, and then that kind of becomes his. It's probably his best known, most successful movie, but he also does is very directs and writes Return of the has some fantastic zombie effects.
Mm.
I quite like it's the first one. I quite like the first one. It's a
I,
lot of fun.
I think
And
that's one I actually didn't see.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very punk rock. Um,
I think I saw on some video or something. Was that the zombie movie that introduced the brain eating idea?
yes, that is
Okay.
where we get. Yeah, so he also gave us Brain Eating.
Hmm.
Um,
There you go.
so
I mean, yeah, the guy's influence as a writer and as just a creator of film in general is pretty significant. I guess I guess going back, I guess I underestimated Dark Star when I first watched it a little bit. But maybe before we get into that, I guess okay. Well, how do you feel about the, I guess, just the bomb itself? I feel like that's the most iconic thing about the movie, right?
Yeah, I think that's a thing that everyone knows about. I mean, that's what I knew about it going into it. That the scene of them trying to talk the bomb out of exploding.
No.
It's a very 2001
Hmm.
influence. I would also say that the final scene is reminiscent of Kubrick's Doctor Strangelove as well.
Yeah, when he rides
Yeah,
the
where he's
board
he's
versus the bomb. I
yeah.
was going to ask you about, like, was that intentional? Has to be, right?
Oh, that has to be. Yeah, that
Okay.
was.
Okay. Cool. All right.
You know, 110%. I'm sure
Okay,
that.
because I mean, it was one of those things that was not an obvious thing, but I'm like, yeah, oh, yeah, this is kind of like when he rides the nuke down. Like, okay, this has to be a reference to that.
Yeah.
Has to be.
Well, yeah, yeah. Carpenter's a film student. Of course, they're watching
And
Kubrick in the.
he's also riffing on 2001. He's seen the other stuff
Yeah. No.
clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, very similar. Pretty cool one. Definitely very satirical, little
Yeah.
dark.
I think it's a legitimately funny scene.
It's the
The
funniest part for me,
Yeah,
probably.
the bomb deciding to blow itself up because
They messed up.
yeah, I can't believe anything. You know.
I can't believe anything you say. I
Yeah.
can't validate it.
Yeah.
So I'm
My
just gonna
only
do what I
purpose in
want.
life is to explode, so I might as well do it.
Got to explode, which is perhaps referenced in Speed when Dennis Hopper's like, what's a bomb that doesn't explode? Cheap watch. Maybe that's a subtle deep cut to Dark Star. Who knows? Could
Yeah,
be.
yeah, yeah, and that's one of those things that again, 2001 does it, but the something about that that like robot logic, I feel like it's used in a lot of movies of, well, my programming is to kill, and therefore I must kill everyone.
I just have to trust that. Like, why wouldn't I trust my
Yeah,
programming? Yeah.
and I think of Chopping Mall, the mostly forgotten 80s slasher film
Oh,
with the killer
with the
robots.
cute little robots in the
Yeah,
ball. Yeah. I know about that.
yeah, but it's the same idea of we are programmed to kill. That it feels like it comes out of this movie to some extent, whether that's true or not.
Well, hmm. Well, I guess that probably it's possible that might have pushed it, but I know we've seen that in older stuff. Star Trek's the
Yeah,
most obvious example, like trying to get the computer to go against its own programming. Though they're a lot more successful at it in Star Trek than these guys
yeah,
are.
yeah. The fact that they fail is what makes this
Well,
interesting.
clearly, well, as we see, these guys are not. They're not the best and brightest. They're very disenchanted at this point. Like the main guy, Doolittle, pretty much only gets excited when he thinks about surfing, or the one chance, much like the machine, when he gets to blow something up. That's like all he likes to do. That he's enthusiastic about. It's like, and they even
Yeah,
look for things like, oh well. Is there anything good out there? I don't care about stuff that's happen. Look for something that might mess up. Oh well, like maybe 12,000 rotations from now. Okay, fine, blow it. Like they're looking for anything to mix things up.
yeah,
So they're not the best at really thinking outside of it. Yeah, the I did kind of like the one guy's plan towards the end though. The one gentleman, I can't forget that character. I forget that character's name. Not Tully, but the guy with the gun, who's the bully essentially.
oh yeah,
The guy with the least amount of lines, the guy that's barely a character, to be honest. His plan was just to just shoot the I guess the cables off and just detach the bomb. I thought that was it's a pretty good idea.
yeah,
I was like, honestly, they probably could have gone for that, but the little scene where him and O'Bannon's character are kind of fighting each other. He's like, "You could have killed me." That's a good little tense, fun scene at the same time the
yeah,
conversation's going on. So I like
yeah.
that.
Well, yeah, and I think this movie, speaking of source code, this movie gets to Moon does this as well, of the sheer boredom of like living and working in space.
By pretty
Like,
much isolated too.
yeah, you're isolated, you're stuck with who you're stuck with. Communication from home takes time. There's something about this, just like sheer tedium of this, that was this is made a few years after the moon landing. Everyone else is like, yeah, space, woo, this is
Woo!
exciting. And Star Wars does the woo space, this is fun.
Yeah.
This is like, nah,
Ugh.
it's gonna be a bunch of dudes riding around, just doing tedious jobs because the computer does most of the work,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just there to hit the button once in a while until something goes wrong.
And that's when it gets exciting.
Yeah,
And you don't know if you necessarily want that. I mean,
yeah,
the main guy who basically takes over wants to just go back home and surf. He's like, I'm over it, which they didn't really go into too much backstory, but I guess it was like maybe seemed like a good gig, some money. Maybe thought he didn't have much. We don't know much about these guys. Very alien-esque. But
yeah,
he's definitely not very happy with his current status. That's for sure.
yeah. No, they're yeah. That's one of the questions. I mean, you get that in Alien. We don't know really much about any of them.
Which I think is one of the most brilliant things about that movie is
Yeah,
how much we care so much about characters that we know through their performances and dialogue, but nothing really expository about them beyond my contract's up. I've been working for a long time, and it ticked off at the company basically.
yeah, yeah. They're all ready to get home, and that's all we need to know. We don't need to know.
And
Um,
I feel like Dark Star's kind of like that too, except these guys have kind of given up on even that.
yeah, there's a definite sense of like they're never going to get home again. I think we
Yeah.
know that they've been out for 20 years or some reference to it being
Mm-hmm.
um, 20 years out here.
But they aged only 3, so because of the
Yeah,
time differential, yeah.
yeah. Um, that yeah, they're and we know that some of the other guys have died either in accidents or via suicide.
Oh yeah, yeah. The one, oh yeah, that was right. Because oh man, the one guy is yeah, he's actually took over accidentally. He wasn't supposed to
Hmm.
be there. He got there accidentally, and he was recording it. No, and nobody believes him. No, like this guy, he threw himself into the engine basically, and because he was originally, I guess, the tech for it, but like he got his uniform, so he thinks he's a completely different guy who's probably not qualified. So it's pretty hilarious. Yeah, I feel like Peter might be frozen. Is it possible? I think it is. Mm-hmm.
Yep,
And
there we go.
and well, hey, we're back again.
Yeah,
But yeah, but he takes over his in the uniform and says, "Oh, I'm the guy." He's probably in a position he's not qualified to be in. So I think it's that's a bit of hilarity there, but also kind of sad in a weird way because nobody acknowledges that guy at all, even though he does try to mix things up. Did you like his comedy with the googly eyes and the rubber chicken, or do you think it's just long past that point?
I think they are. I think they are very far past the.
The simple gags at this point.
Yeah, yeah,
But he's
but
still trying, which I guess is something.
yeah, and it fits with the trying to break up the tedium by any means as possible. The just randomly shooting things or um, keeping a beach ball alien past the time, but
Hmm.
yeah, I think there's a sense of yeah, there's a sense of relief as he's surfing down that he gets to surf again.
Hmm. And it's cool. And also the I guess Tully, who is the observer, is like really kind of just looking at the majesty of the universe. Is like, oh, I'll get to fly along with these comets, which he was kind of hinting about earlier. So
Yeah,
kind of a nice sort of end for those characters, I guess.
yeah, they get
Kind of what they want.
yeah, which may have might have just been to get off that ship and
Yeah, just to be done with that.
yeah.
Cut off that contract.
Hmm.
Well, I'm actually really curious now, Peter, because all right, you wanted to watch this again, and you said that you didn't appreciate that much. So, what do you think's changed? What were your initial impressions of it early on?
Well, this is a movie in which not a lot happens. Like you said, there's sort of in two halves. This is not a long movie. It's under 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But there are long segments. The elevator, which I liked a lot more this time around, but I think last time I found kind of tedious because it's like, okay, he's going to get out of the elevator. Oh no, he fell through the floor. Okay, he's stuck there. That now I see, now I'm like, okay, that was funny.
And it was
Um,
impressive for them to do,
yeah,
actually.
and
Yeah.
that was a for the budget they had. Yeah, that's a pretty fantastic special effect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where seemingly a pretty simple thing to do, but the way they shot it, the angles and the set design. I think I didn't take the beach ball alien seriously. I think I was just like, oh yeah, some cheeseball 70s Doctor Who alien or something.
Mm.
I think I just wasn't in the right mindset to enjoy it.
Do you think maybe now a little more that they were kind of in on their own joke at some points?
Yeah, definitely. Knowing knowing Carpenter better now, knowing O'Bannon's work better, I get a lot more of what they're going for. I really like the blue collar aesthetic, and the characters are much less obnoxious when you look at them from, yeah, these are guys that have been doing this for 20 years and hate
Oh,
it and hate each other and just
ugh.
want something.
Else.
Yeah, anything.
Yep.
Anything. Yeah, that's why you bring the beach ball alien on board, because you want something to break up the tedium.
And it certainly broke it up for that one character at least.
Yeah.
Uh, so, or let me ask you this, Peter. I guess after this time, what do you think, watching it now, you appreciate as like its best qualities? What do you think is best about Dark Star? Like why it's so important?
Well, I think it's that aesthetic. I think that it really gets a certain style that shows up in a lot of other places. I think I even see it in something like Cowboy Bebop, which
Hmm.
is its own mix of things, but that um, the sort of boredom of space isn't
Hmm.
something that you see a lot in film or in television, but I see it in something like Cowboy Bebop. There are plenty of episodes of that that start with them hanging out, floating around, hungry, or looking for something to do, or looking for a bounty that really gets to that here.
Hmm.
I'm really impressed with the budget and what they did with that money, and however they made that stretch and work to get a feature length film out of this, even if it is sort of those two halves, it feels a little disconnected. Um, but with the fact they shot over 4 years, the continuity is pretty good. The beards, I uh, however they, whoever they had doing their trimming the beards and doing the hairstyling kept things looking.
uh, I guess it's the dedication of those actors over time, probably doing it for little or no money, honestly.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah, I'm sure they were.
Theater
I mean,
students or
yeah.
something. Yeah, some of those guys are just friends. So that I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate the sensibilities there too. I guess when I watched it years ago, I kind of, I guess I kind of thought it was kind of a quaint little cult movie. I did sort of appreciate it, but I didn't know how low budget it was and how a little bit of the backstory I think helps. And also, I guess from trying to kind of make movies myself and learning a lot about stuff like special features behind the scenes and learning more about Carpenter and how he works, I think I was able to appreciate that. Like, just that was one thing. Like just seeing it as like the kind of the origins and of Carpenter's style, and I guess O'Bannon's writing, and just the knowing that O'Bannon, obviously he acted in it and he edited it, and he like that it was a passion project for these indie filmmakers. I really love that in general. Whenever I see that, and just to see kind of low budget movies like that, and to see one be so successful like this is quite inspiring, and I think is something that anybody that wants to just appreciate movies or learn how to make them on a low budget. I was like, wow, I like that. I want to try and do that myself sometime. It was kind of cool. I really liked some of those things, even if they were really low budget. I was like, it's kind of cute. Like it's still kind of it's serviceable, you know.
Yeah, I think this. I place this in conversation with something like El Mariachi, where it is not
Ooh,
the
one of my
best
favorites.
film that uh, Robert Rodriguez made,
No,
but for that budget, for the money he spent, just understanding the behind the scenes stuff, it's these are both pretty good blueprints on how to make a movie on a budget and how to.
yeah, El Mariachi's like another really good example because I watched that I think a couple years ago, and honestly, that's one of the most impressive things I've ever seen because he made that for literally next to nothing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think with El Mariachi, the scene where they're firing a machine gun, but they only have one bullet, so they're cutting around it. And I imagine there, I don't know as much about Dark Star, but I bet there are a lot of scenes of this that are okay. Yeah, we only, we had this, or we had one model that we had to blow up, or we had to do.
Got to make this work because we only got one
Yeah,
film, one shot to do
yeah,
it. We spent months making this thing, which reminds me a little bit of the thing where with the scene where the chest burster comes out, not the chest burster, but the
yeah,
monster opens up and eats the doctor. That whole scene didn't work well the first time and literally got set on fire. They had to destroy it and make the whole thing again. So, you know, I guess he was happy he had a budget to do that this time because I bet back then they probably couldn't have so easily
yeah,
make it work. Um, but yeah, I remember I took a few notes because there were just a couple things that appreciated about it. Like I talked a bit about the signature. Like I liked obviously I liked, like I said, some of the trick photography and his use of lighting with certain scenes, and particularly like the elevator scene, how music punctuates it to build up the tension. I like the score in this a lot. The simple little score.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely, you can see, not as memorable as Halloween, but you
Bow,
definitely see
bow.
yeah, you definitely see the start of Carpenter, and I think in some ways his music is the thing that he's maybe best remembered for at this point.
These days, I mean, that's all he does now is just
Yeah.
play music and make albums, which I love his music. It's very him, but you ever want to get a vibe for like a score of a new Carpenter movie, just yeah, check out some of his albums. The Lost Themes ones are really good. I think there's that and that one video of his I wish I knew what the name was. I watch it all the time. It's really great. I should reference it at some point. But basically, check out his Sacred Bones records if you want to, because that's what John Carpenter does is mostly music. So listen to his stuff. It's great for that 80s synth horror. Really good stuff, actually. Really
Oh
good.
yeah, yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, great for like a horror themed Dungeons and Dragons session, or
Yes,
yeah.
use it for that, and check out the channel. So I guess the studio gets monetized or whatever
Hmm.
for them. That help them out a little bit. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. But yeah, honestly, I think Carpenter. I know he's kind of burnt out on movies because of how he feels about Hollywood and whatnot. But I feel like he should totally just do if he did film scores for people like horror ones, or that would be really cool if he wanted
Yeah,
to.
well, he had a hand. I think he was maybe co-composer with the most recent Halloween, the
Hmm. He
David
did.
Gordon Green.
Yep, he worked on the score on that. Yeah.
And I know that he consulted on that. He it does have, I think, a producer credit or something, but he was involved in the discussions and how that was made.
He had some
But
input. Yeah.
yeah, he's still active. I mean, he's probably the last one of his generation of horror filmmakers that's still alive.
Yeah, he's pretty up there now, right?
Yeah, he's in his 70s.
Yeah, late
Let me think.
70s, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah, something like that. But
somewhere in
he's
there. Yeah.
still doing stuff. And there were a couple little effects I really did like. One little thing I got early on in the movie is you remember how they do get the shields to go up, and it's that classic, just basically colored over like old school. They just kind of paint it red over the ship, which I thought was effective and automatically made me think of like Forbidden Planet or something older.
Mhm.
But one little detail I liked was that they had the same effect. It looks like half of like getting stunned by something in Star Trek with internally around the crew members. So there was protection from outside, but also if they were shaking inside from internal stuff. So I like that detail.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, and that definitely, yeah, maybe that was like a Star Trek reference. And there is one of the one of the dead crew members was killed by like an exploding panel or something.
Of course, because they always are. For
Some,
some reason, you get hit, and then the
yeah,
sparks and the panels blow up in your face.
yeah,
Pretty big design flaw for
yeah,
Starfleet, right?
yeah. So definitely, it definitely feels like that somebody watched some Star Trek and went, okay,
Yeah,
we're
let's
gonna deconstruct that a little bit.
just a little bit. So I did appreciate that, and also another one that stuck out. In terms of the beach ball alien, I didn't really notice it as much the first time, but it does have little hands. You can see there might be a head or a mouth under there. I never noticed the cheap little gloves, but that's a cool little detail I thought was pretty effective because when it's jumping on him, the hands actually look pretty good. I like the little hands on top of the ball. I mean, or under the ball rather. That was good.
Yeah,
And I think my favorite little effect, which really surprised me. Well, actually, no, there's another one. I liked the laser beam because the big laser gun they have is a cool looking prop, and they didn't. I liked that they either couldn't figure out how, or maybe it would be too involved to do a laser effect. So they did something where basically they had a flash, and then next shot there's like smoke from the little piece of shard with a hole in it, and I liked that. That was cool because you believe there was some kind of little explosion, but you can't quite see it. That was clever. But my favorite little effect, actually, because it was a perfect, kind of cheesy, bad effect, but it worked and it was so quick that I was like, that's fine. Was when when Doolittle's going after Tully, and you see his jetpack, and he clicks the button to basically send the thrusters out, and you'd expect like flame or smoke, but it's just a little bit of confetti shoots out. It's like a second. You're like, oh, that was clever. That's because it looks like it could be like, I don't know, leftover hydro stuff, or the carbon freezing for the captain, which is a creepy little, clearly just wrapped in like foil, whatever. And I guess he survived too somehow. He's going to be fine in space, I guess, because
Yeah.
they said he was dead and then he wasn't, which was interesting. He's not really dead. He's just they're keeping until they ever get home. But yeah, that little, it's the little details like that, how they kind of just had to be creative with it and somehow make it work and sell it. And it's literally only a second frame. If you look at it close up, like, wow, that's definitely little pellets. That's not smoke. That's not flame. It's just like confetti that falls out of this pipe. But I appreciate the little filmmaking tips like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. There's so many little things like that that really make this a more important and memorable film than it otherwise would be.
Yeah, it's like an interesting fusion of a lot of the things I love, because I like the sleek, high concept sci-fi stuff, which this clearly was inspired by and inspired in a lot of ways,
Mm.
but also has the B campy root of a lot of old sci-fi, which is also very important, which this is still clearly built upon the template of and homaging, I suppose. Or just doing because they have to, making it's a little campy, elements of a B movie, but also kind of smart. It's a weird fusion of different sensibilities, which I kind of love.
Yeah, and it's interesting that this also comes out before Star Wars, which is its own remixing of those B movie campy elements into something else. So whatever was going on right now, everyone was tapping into the nostalgia in different ways.
Hmm.
That this was not Star Wars. This would never be Star Wars, but it has its own value, and it does show up in some odd places after.
Hmm. I guess other side of that before we wrap up. I mean, is there anything about it that really stands out you dislike? I guess kind of summing it up, like where you'd sort of rate it as a film for you because you appreciate it more. But would you say it has glaring flaws within itself, or is it more
Yeah, I
like,
mean, I think the main problem that we discussed earlier on is that there's two separate plots that never really connect.
hmm, that was my biggest issue with it? Yeah.
It just feels like it could have been two episodes of something, two Star Trek episodes kind of welded together in the middle, but the and it maybe been part of the intent is, oh, here's these things. May have also been that they were trying to get to feature length and went, okay, we can't figure out how to expand the bomb thing, so we're going to add in a story about a beach ball alien.
uh, do you think that maybe they could have kind of fleshed out more conversations with the characters and maybe more with the bomb, and tried to kind of pad it out that way to make it more, or would that have been too close to Space Odyssey parody? Maybe.
Yeah, that might have gotten too close. I think maybe if we got to know the previous commander, the captain that gets frozen,
Hmm.
um, had that as sort of the spend some time with them, and then the accident happens and he dies, and then use that as the inciting incident, and then
As things start to kind of get worse, like,
Yeah, so we can see
oh,
the pre-existing power structure and then how things change when the new guy's in charge and nobody cares about him. And
and nobody knows what to do, and then they
yeah,
start kind of falling apart more, and then monster gets out, maybe causes the bomb
yeah,
to get disrupted, and then leads into another issue, maybe a longer debate with the bomb, maybe.
yeah. I think that hindsight being 2020,
Always.
uh, uh, um, that yeah, you could do this differently, but we're also not college students with a $60,000 budget shooting this on our weekends.
Yeah, exactly. That's why. No, believe me. Trust me.
Yeah. Oh no.
You know
Yeah.
me. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not the guy to be like, yeah, you should have done this. No, I think what they did is so impressive and admirable.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't get all the story beats right. Like, this is a feat of
Yeah.
independent
No.
creative.
The achievement of this, um, and what they did and the effects and doing it on a nothing budget, is truly impressive.
Yeah.
Um, I love Night of the Living Dead, but you can say, okay, yeah, they had a $60,000 budget. Yeah, okay, it makes sense. It's basically a few people in makeup, a lot of other people just standing around. Yeah, okay. Um, but there's things in here, like we could make Night of the Living Dead, and people have gone out and made it themselves. I don't think we could make Dark Star. Um,
Uh, I could tell you right now. I mean, it would take some finagling, but yes, I like
yeah,
making a Night of the Living Dead movie would be much easier for us to do
yeah.
than a Dark Star. Like, because I'll actually tell you about this because this sort of it's sort of interesting. I don't even maybe that's why I was thinking of it, but if I would like to eventually try to attempt to do a kind of a low budget sci-fi movie, very much in the same vein as Dark Star. What I'd probably try and do. I'm actually you're the first person I'm telling about this, or second person. I would like to I'd like to basically try to obviously make it as serious as I possibly could, but inevitably know that it would probably become campy and still do it with the sensibilities of an old school set. Like, but the one thing I thought about immediately, because with the stuff I've made, it's like I made with literally basically no money. I would actually have to build sets and have props. I would need money to get
Mhm.
even close to something like Dark Star. Whereas Night of the Living Dead get some people, a little bit of blood, because those zombies didn't even have deformities really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be much easier to do.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, yeah. I've known people that have made films like Night of the Living Dead that
Hmm.
science fiction is a whole other.
It's. I thought it was really ironic because if I ever do that, it would it would be something that would be more expensive for me, and it would still probably come off being extremely low budget, but I would need an actual budget of some kind to kind of
Yeah,
do it. That's the great irony of it. I think is funny. So that's why I'd want to lean into that. But I don't know. But that's why I was kind of glad to watch this again because it really impressed me and made me think I need to study this and try to do that. Like the confetti thing, I want to try to recreate that or use smoke. I don't know. I don't know what I would do. But
yeah. But I think figuring out how they did what they did and how they made this work, I think there's uh,
there's stuff there to learn about for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, man. So this was very cool. I guess we could kind of end by saying how we feel about it overall. I mean, I know being associated with the old film fanatics crew and Dan reviews it. I mean, we could kind of grade it, I guess. I mean, I don't really care. I usually just saying I like it, it's pretty good or not. But
yeah.
great grades seem more solid. It kind of puts us out there to make it more definitive, I guess. What do you think a good grade for Dark Star is, Peter?
I'd probably give it a B. Like the ambition, maybe a B plus for the ambition. Yeah, the plot's a little weak. There's some things that don't quite.
Characters could be a little more fleshed
Yeah,
out.
characterization could be a little more built up. Um, but it's definitely worth watching if you're a fan of science fiction or low budget filmmaking. I think it does have a reputation as being sort of a really cheesy like MST3K level thing, but
It's not that level. No.
No.
It's actually much there are a lot of moments in it that are pretty competent. Like there was some satire and some things you could laugh at, I guess, kinda like the ball alien, but most of the time you're like, this is just kind of quirky and the atmosphere all kind of works.
Yeah, it's not. That's not like Plan 9 from Outer Space or something where
Which is
it's
that level of oblivious
yeah,
incompetence,
which has
yeah.
it has its place and is certainly
Al-
enjoyable to watch. But
Also a classic in a
yeah,
certain sense. Yeah.
classic, but in a different way. This is not. This is not that. This
No,
is
this is not one to completely riff on, no.
no.
But it dips its toe in that camp a little bit at times.
Yeah,
Intentionally, I think.
yeah. I agree. I think it is conversing with again those B movies of the 40s and 50s that Carpenter and O'Bannon and the rest of them grew up watching.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Peter. I think a B or maybe B plus sounds pretty good, especially the stuff that was impressive with the effects and everything. It's pretty cool. Um, yeah, well, I guess that's it. Anything else you want to say about Dark Star or other movies before we wrap up? I mean, we've gone about an hour, so honestly,
Yeah,
longer than I thought. I thought Dark Star 45 minutes maybe, but we surpassed it. I always underestimate somehow.
no, that's fair. I mean, if you've never seen a John Carpenter movie, there are better John Carpenter movies. But
True.
if you've seen The Thing and Halloween and Big Trouble in Little China, seen all the big Carpenters, this is worth checking out too.
Yeah.
There's some value in this that even if you're not an aspiring filmmaker, that's worth watching. And if you are an aspiring filmmaker, uh, look for, this is something special, and I think there's stuff here
There's
that'll
gold in there.
yeah, somewhere in there.
In the
Might
murkiness.
yeah, I need to look for it a little bit, but again, the talking bomb at the end alone is, I think, a
Iconic.
great comedic set piece that most people know it for. But there's more to this movie than just that. Although that's probably the
The main takeaway.
yeah, yeah.
That and
If
rubber
not,
ball alien.
beach ball alien. Uh, that works better than you think it would, as long as you just kind of
Accept it
yeah,
on its terms. Yeah.
characters accept it, and so should you. But
There you go. That's I guess storytelling 101. I pretty much echo that, Peter. I'd say yeah, if especially just like I said, if you like he said, if you like old science fiction and B movies, especially of this time, I'd say go for it. If you like John, one little tidbit, Peter, that surprises me. This is one that I always forget John Carpenter did.
mm-hmm.
Like what I'm always so used to thinking about The Thing and Halloween and Escape from New York and just like these other ones, and I'm just like I always like whenever I think of his first movie, I always think Assault on Precinct 13. I always kind of forget this is actually his first movie, and I don't know why. It's like it never pops up immediately for me. Like I don't usually don't make the connection as much, but I don't know
Yeah,
why that
yeah,
is.
and I think, and it wouldn't for I would think that Assault for a long time. I think I thought that Assault on Precinct 13 was first.
Hmm.
Um, in some ways, because it feels cheaper because it's not a science fiction movie. Um, that's a great filmmaking class in its own right of
Hmm.
figuring out how to do what they did on there, and I think a larger budget than this. But
Probably,
yeah, John Carpenter is one of the greatest living directors. This
I
is
agree.
a not a great place to start necessarily because he has
Not
better
for
movies, but it's a
yeah, like
good stop on the way, and better than some of his later stuff,
yeah,
unfortunately.
maybe not peak Carpenter intro or anything, but it's definitely one to check out to get a sense of who he is.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a good place to stop, Peter. I'm gonna say thank you for joining me again. I guess well we could talk about anything, but it seems like we tend to gravitate towards science fiction,
yeah.
which is great, of course, and could always be other things that you're welcome to come back anytime. Maybe I'll see you in the spring for Source Code
I imagine I'll be here for source code.
because you're the guy that's like watch it. One of them.
Yeah, yeah. That's that. Yeah, that's yeah, we'll do. I should be there for source code. That's definitely my bag.
If you want to pop up before then,
Yeah, I think maybe we could do something before then. We'll talk.
it'll be.
I've seen at least one good science fiction film this year, so
I have seen so few movies this year that it is
yeah.
sad.
I
I like no, it's like because I have seen very few movies this
Well,
year,
if you
and
have if you have Amazon Prime, I really liked Vast of Night. Uh,
I think Justin told me about that. I do have Prime. I have a list. Yeah, I have a list. Dan recommended a couple. Justin recommended a couple. So I think Vast Night told me about any other ones you'd recommend for me.
for this year,
Yeah,
um,
even the last couple was fine because
last couple, yeah,
I didn't see as much like from 2018 on really
yeah. I mean, we've had some. I admit that I'm a little behind on.
stuff.
So, yeah, I'm behind on a little bit of everything.
Me too. I am behind on a lot of stuff actually. I got to get caught up, but but movies I've got a list of a couple that I was told. I've got to watch Tenet soon. I might even review that.
Oh yeah, I haven't even seen Tenet yet.
Yeah, that's another one. Dan and Justin were just like, you gotta watch Tenet, and so it's gonna happen soon.
Yeah, yeah,
So there's a few. But yeah, if you recommend anything, you think of anything later, let me know. Um, yeah, that's
yeah. Maybe we can do something with recent. This is from the '70s. Maybe we can find some recent science fiction we haven't
eh,
seen.
we talked about it that we could come up with a list of stuff to talk about, like something I could think of a couple off the bat that I wouldn't mind talking to you about. I'll talk to you about it after we stop
Yeah,
recording.
yeah,
All right, but we're going to make that the official professional end of this totally planned, well, semi-planned, semi-organized
yeah,
podcast thing. Yeah, but
yeah. We slightly planned. I think.
scheduled.
Yeah, it
Had
was
us a
actually on
topic.
the schedule, which is helpful because I have too much going on in my life. But I
Hey,
can
I'm
make
with you,
time for my
man.
good friend Joe.
Oh, thank you, Peter. No, I really do appreciate it. It's good to talk to you, and I like to have you again. I'm busy too, but I like to try to get these projects out. It's great to talk about movies and stuff. I love it. All right, everybody, say bye to Peter, and stay magical.